All right. There was one thing I wanted to touch on, and I wanted your opinion on it. Um,
Okay, yeah,
I'm not sure.
definitely.
Yeah, I had noticed something in the dialogue, and I'll read it to you real quick. And it's not going to be read in the actual order that the dialogue is delivered in TFA, but I'm going to read it in a specific way for you to notice a pattern. And I'm curious how you take this. Okay. The first line is from Lor Santeca to Kylo Ren. The First Order rose from the dark side. You did not. You cannot deny the truth. It is your family. And then the next one is from Maz to Rey. Dear child, I see your eyes. You already know the truth. Whomever you're waiting for on Jakku, they're never coming back. But there's someone who still could. And then, of course, Rey to BB-8. And this line, for me, always stuck out, even though it was referencing Poe and it was referencing what BB-8 was after. It just really stuck with me because this connects to the line previously that Maz says to Rey. Okay, the line goes, "Don't give up hope. He still might show up, whoever it is you're waiting for." And then BB-8, of course, asks her, "Who are you waiting for?" And she replies, "My family. They'll be back one day." And then the next line is from Leia to Han. "You think I want to forget him. I want him back. There's still light in him. I know it." And then this is Maz to Rey continued. "The belonging you seek is not behind you. It is ahead. I am no Jedi, but I know the Force. It moves through and surrounds every living thing. Close your eyes. Feel it. The light. It's always been there. It will guide you." And then she says, "The saber. Take it." And then Kylo Ren says to the Vader mask, "I feel it again, the pull to the light." Then Rey says to Maz, "I'm never touching that thing, lightsaber, again. I don't want any part of this." Then Kylo Ren to Finn, "That lightsaber, it belongs to me." Then Rey to Kylo Ren, "I'm not giving you anything." Kylo Ren to Rey, "We'll see." Kylo Ren to Rey again, "You imagine an ocean. I see it. I see the island." Now, what I gleaned from this, what I wrote, I'll just read what I wrote. It's easier that
Okay.
way. What if these lines were interwoven subtextually as foreshadowing of something very important, like, say, the meeting between two people drawn to the light? What if the light is drawing these two people to a place, an island, for example? What if the lightsaber, destiny, called to Rey in the beginning despite her ignoring its call because Kylo Ren cannot take the lightsaber. It must be given to Ben Solo by Rey because it belongs to Ben Solo, not Kylo Ren. And then I referenced the line, "Don't be afraid, I feel it too." Now, this one was interesting to me. I said the most important line of all, and I've never seen this discussed. So if someone has mentioned this, I apologize in advance, but what if this was a Freudian slip on Ben's part? What if he was so caught up in his mental connection with Rey and delving into her mind, being drawn to her and the will of the light, that he offhandedly revealed a secret both of them felt? They both feel the pull of destiny, but Ben doesn't realize that the light is pulling him to Rey directly. Not simply that she feels the same pull he does, he's being pulled to her. And then I quoted this from the novelization. This is Kylo Ren to Rey on Takodana. "There is something. Who are you?" And then this is Kylo Ren to Rey on Starkiller Base. "It is you." And I said, what's interesting to note is that despite Ben divulging his secret to the Vader mask, he does not ignore the call or the pull to the light. He pursues Rey and intertwines their destinies, completely un-Vader like. Ben cannot deny the truth. He even admits as much to Lor Santeca before striking him down. See the play on words? I'm sure Ben was unaware of his own impulsive pull to the light and it being directly connected to Rey, the island, the lightsaber, and ultimately his resurrection as Ben Solo. However, that doesn't matter when it comes to subtext. Ben inadvertently self-sabotaged his own goals in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
And then I referenced said, I think, yeah, Rey to Kylo Ren, you're afraid you'll never be as strong as Darth Vader. I said Ben Solo is not ready for his true destiny, the truth that is his family, because he still wants to live up to his skewed perception of who he believes himself to be, Vader's grandson, and all the pomp and ugly circumstance that goes with it. He's still under Snoke's spell, and the only way to break it is through pain. And then I referenced Han's line to Kylo Ren, my son is alive. So all of that tied together, I actually think one of the most important lines for me, because you don't think it's connected to Ben and Rey and just the overall plot of a Skywalker being on his redemption path, but it's the line that Rey gives to BB-8. Don't give up hope. He still might show up, whoever it is you're waiting for. That line, to me, it always stuck out. Even in the first time when I saw the movie, I was like, that's kind of foreshadowing. That's a little much for me. Even though it's referencing Poe, it's still stuck.
I agree with you, and I think I've never really thought of that particular line before, but it makes a lot of sense because there's like this recurring theme of he still might show up. There's someone who still could come back. You know, like there's always this reference to someone returning.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, like if you're thinking about, Kylo Ren, who was once on the light side, so he's been there before. So him breaking away from the dark side in the First Order, he would be returning. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's just like, I mean, I just thought that was beautiful. There was so much going on, so many different layers, to like what that could potentially mean. And I agree with you that the one line in the interrogation scene, don't be afraid, I feel it too. I feel like that's like the most cryptic line in the whole
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. And honestly, I went back, and I have to admit, I went back and watched the interrogation scene again, and I have to say, it's so interesting to me because if you compare it to Poe's, what does he do? Kylo Ren is the first one to speak. He speaks very snidely, very callously to Poe, and he asks him first, comfortable? And this once is you contrast this to the fact that he answers Rey. Rey is the one who demands, "Where am I?" She's the first one to speak, and this actually puts her in charge of the whole scene. That's why anytime they make the rape argument or the mind probe, that is such crap, because you look at how he's kneeling at her feet. She asks the question first. He answers her honestly. And not only that, with him telling her, "You're my guest," he's saying, "Don't worry. No one's going to touch you. No one's going to harm you. You're under my care. And
Yeah,
you're my guest." And he's also letting her know, "You're not my enemy either." Because in the very next line, when she asks where the others are, he differentiates her from the others.
yeah, he
And he,
does.
yeah. So he's letting her know, "You're a neutral party. You're my guest. You're not my enemy. But I will take what I need. I need that map." And he does. He oscillates back and forth. And this was basically the reason I mentioned it again is in the interrogation scene, they speak very quietly to one another, and it's whispered. It has this very intimate feel to it. But the first time I noticed when they were using the I guess you could say the decibel level of voice and speaking through whispers was when Kylo Ren says the map, "You've seen it." And the way he says that line, it is so intimate to me. I remember the first time I watched it, like I said, I wasn't a fan of the movie to begin with, but that was one thing that stuck with me. I was like, whoa, that was really quiet and almost like a lover's whisper to me. I know that
Yeah,
sounds
no, no, because it is kind of like that. And even when he says, "Oh, the girl I've heard so much about," like his voice is like kind of dulcet. and
yes.
and then it's true, like in the interrogation scene there's like just like at the volume that they're speaking, and especially too when he says, "Don't be afraid, I feel it too," like because you do see him oscillate back and forth between trying to be like this like duty bound person who's trying to get the map from her, but then also having this obvious tenderness for her. And when he says that particular line, like I always it always struck me that there was like this look of tenderness on his face, almost like he just couldn't help himself. He was melting into just a pile of mush seeing her being in pain.
He's so besotted.
He is.
And yeah, it is that he does it twice. Whenever he says the map, "You've seen it," and then he says, "Don't be afraid, I feel it too." Those were two instances where he whispers, and he does it in such a way that they really mirror each other. But it's this very secretive, very intimate, just the two of them share it, and no other character relationships are shown that way in TFA.
That's
And it
true. They're
really,
not.
yeah, and it really it makes them stand out. And I'm excited for what's going to happen in episode 8, because some people are a little skittish. They're thinking, no, we're not going to have anything romantic. Me, I'm not going all the way out, but I think we're going to get a whole lot more than people are expecting, because in order for Kylo Ren's character, go back to Ben Solo, but in order for him to fully embrace himself, he has to do something shocking for the audience to be like, whoa. And it has to be with the main protagonist. It has to be with Rey, because we understand through the angles of the camera used and the way the story is portrayed that she's the main protagonist. And in order for his action to have the biggest impact, it has to be with her. Has to be with her.
I'm really curious, just because you know, Rian Johnson ended up doing that interview where he sort of specified what was going to be in The Last Jedi and what wasn't. And obviously, like, within the Reylo fandom, people were pretty disappointed over what he said, because the conclusion seemed to be that really there wasn't going to be this, like, hot and heavy romance, like, with, kind of in the style of Han and Leia. And there's been some, people have written things since then, and they've also, kind of gone over it in other podcasts, where they've sort of analyzed what Rian Johnson said and kind of differentiated between, like, what the journalist, kind of, like, what
he put his own spin on it. Yeah,
he put his own spin on it, and then there was what Rian Johnson said. And from what I took from what Rian Johnson said, just in my opinion, is that we're not necessarily, like, it was interesting how he kind of characterized Han and Leia as being an unrequited romance, because I've never looked at them as being unrequited. But I have, but it was kind of disappointing, because I have always sort of seen Rey and Kylo Ren as being similar to Han and Leia in terms of, like, the antagonism, or it's kind of an adversarial romance in the beginning, and then you kind of see them come together. So for him to say it's not going to be like Han and Leia, it's like, it was kind of a double-edged sword for me. I was really happy to know that it wasn't going to be exactly like Han and Leia, and wasn't going to be just a play-by-play of The Empire Strikes Back. But also, like, it left me wondering, okay, what will Rey and Kylo Ren be like if not hot and heavy? Because just based off of the scenes that they have had together, I mean, they're pretty hot and heavy. You have to admit.
Yeah. I think also the unrequited love part, I believe that was a reference to Anakin and Padme. At least I thought. I don't know. There was a lot of talk, and I'm not exactly sure, but I thought it was Anakin and Padme. And the thing about the romance not being a centerpiece is, I always took that with a grain of salt. Number one, because whenever you're promoting the movie, but you're trying to keep it a secret, you word things in such a way. And I'm sorry, but I just, romance not being a centerpiece doesn't necessarily mean that it's not the overall part of the plot. It just means that at this point in time, it's not a centerpiece. It's kind of like how you have Mulder and Scully, and throughout the series, you notice that there's just something electric about these two. They have hot and heavy moments, but it's not like cheap romantic moments where it's fan servicey, if you will. But it has these really intense moments where they're just looking at each other, or they share just the same space, and you can feel the history between the two of them, and that the history just keeps building, and it's more layered and more nuanced and everything. And then finally, at the end of the series, you realize that their romance was the whole point. And it just that's what I think Kylo Ren and Rey are going to be. And I think we are going to have romance. I just don't think it's going to be where it's typical. Their how do I explain it? Their romance to me for Rey and Kylo Ren, it's a journey in and of itself individually, because Kylo is in a very different place compared to how his father was, or even Anakin was. He's in the place Anakin was at the end of the prequel trilogy. So Kylo really is in a very unique position. And then you have Rey, and the fact that she has her own demons of her past, and we don't know what they are yet. And she's learning. And honestly, Rey, whenever people make the argument of there's no way that Rey could accept Kylo Ren because he killed Han, I have to say, you know what? Just imagine it this way. The way Rey perceived Han was not healthy either. The way Ben looked at Han and the way Rey looked at Han, both sides were not healthy because they were both contrasting opposites. She looked up to Han so much so that you could see it in certain scenes. She just glossed over some of the stuff he did. And then whenever he was offering her a job, she was giddy with it. She was so excited. And then you have Ben, who sees this in her head, and he's bothered by it. He's also hurt by it, and you actually see it whenever he's just the little mannerisms that the actor does is very beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, but the way he perceives Han too is negative. So when they make the argument that she could never forgive Kylo Ren for what he's done, that's not true at all, because both of them have very immature perceptions. They're wearing rose-colored glasses, both in their own way, about father figures. And I think that's an interesting parallel between the two of them, one that I haven't seen anybody really touch on. People probably have. I just haven't seen any on Tumblr yet.
I do think that that's a good way of phrasing it, though, and I agree with you. And going back to kind of your comparison of Rey and Kylo Ren to, you know, the X-Files, I agree that that's the way that I see the romance going, and honestly, that's the type of romance that I would like to see, and that's what makes Reylo so satisfying thus far, is that in The Force Awakens, it wasn't really given to us super easily. We really had to work at it, and it was cool how everybody came together to dissect and analyze it and discuss it, because then we were each sort of supporting each other and coming to the understanding that we have now. You know, I think that, we're in a much different place in our understanding of Reylo than we were when the movie first came out. And and I kind of was thinking about it in relation to Rogue One, how they handled the romance in that movie. And I didn't like Rogue One as much as The Force Awakens. Like, I thought it was a good movie, but just not as compelling, I guess. But one of the things that I did really like about it was how the romance was handled, and where you had Jyn and Cassian. The romance definitely wasn't central to the story, but you had kind of these hints, and throughout the whole movie, that that they were attracted to each other, or there was this connection there. And then at the very end, when instead of kissing, they're just looking at each other very intensely, and then they hold each other, as the planet is destroyed and stuff. I just remembered thinking, like, that was it was a much more powerful way of kind of conveying their relationship than having them have just some random kissing scene that you see in every movie. And and like, it was actually a very truly emotionally packed moment. And so I kind of see them handling Rey and Kylo Ren the same way, like as you talked about with the journey. So it's going to be a lot more about the journey than it will be about just that one moment where they make out for 2 seconds and then that's it.
I agree, and I think that we will get a kiss between them, but it's going to be well placed. And I've also said this before. I believe I got an ask about it. I can't remember, but if we get a kiss in episode 8, it will be well placed and it will be necessary. If we don't, it's not a bad thing. but we will eventually get a kiss between them because it cements the whole part of the story. But yeah, the journey itself for Rey and Kylo Ren is extremely important in that this has never been touched on in the movie verse before. From what I understand, I'm not as well versed in the extended parts of Star Wars, but from what I understand, relationships like Rey and Kylo Ren have been done before in the past, whether it's in comics or games or other books.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
so
believe it is.
yeah, it's definitely this type of romance isn't a new thing to the Star Wars universe, especially if you go beyond the movies.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, so many Star Wars quote unquote fans seem to seem to think that this is like the most vile thing ever, which is
they,
just ridiculous.
they're just doing that honestly because it's a threat. I never take anti seriously. Anytime they're ragging on somebody, I'm just like, don't even pay attention to them because they're not worth it. They're just doing that because they're honestly threatened and they're jealous, and they don't like the fact that many in the Reylo fandom have been spot on when it comes to predictions. That
Yeah.
is what scares them the most.
Yeah, and I think that it kind of threatens sort of like their own concept
Idea.
of Star
Mm-hmm.
Wars and what it
Mm-hmm.
means to them. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I'm really curious because they have talked about how not the antis, but the makers of The Last Jedi, they've talked about how when the entire cast read the script for the first time that they were all pretty shocked. And even Mark
Ooh.
Hamill was really upset with some of the things that happened in relation to his character, but that, once he had talked to Ryan Johnson about it, that he was on board with it because he saw the point of the story going that way. So that got me so interested in
Yes.
finding out what
Yes.
happens.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. That's great to hear. I hadn't heard all of that, but yeah, that's exciting to hear. I love that.
I do too.
I have to say what I don't know if this is gonna happen, but this is just something I would love to see. If and this is terrible of me, what I would love to see is if Ben Solo has defected from the First Order and he's still not sure of himself. He doesn't know what he wants. But he gets captured and taken to Snoke, and it's his turn in the interrogation chair this time. And it's not just like it's going to be with Rey, where Snoke's going to be all nice. No, it's going to be 20 times worse than Poe, and you're going to see Ben all bloody.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
wow.
I'm sorry, but I do. I want to see that because for me, I know it's horrible and it's torturous to Ben, yes, but if Ben rises above that, what happens to him, if theoretically in that scene, it would for me be very satisfying because he's coming full circle, realizing this is what you put your faith in, this
Yeah.
creature here, and then for him to go through it and really just as Ben Solo now instead of Kylo Ren, a complete person who perceives both his dark and his light. It just for me would be very, very, very satisfying. I don't think it's going to happen, but that would just be a scene that I would like to see. I believe it was I think it was Jedi Wine Trick who she made a speculation post about what she would like to see, and it was a subversion of fantasy tropes about how Ben would be the one that needs rescuing, and Rey would have to go in and rescue him, and a potential for him being tortured. And I really love that idea because it would be so interesting, and it's something you really have never seen in the Star Wars movies before. The fact that Ben has gone from being the light side, but you see him first and foremost as a dark sider, and now he's oscillating back and forth, but he's fully accepted himself as Ben Solo, and now he's being tortured by the very false father figure who he put all his faith into and even killed his flesh and blood father for. So it just for me would be very satisfying to see something like that.
I can see how that would be really satisfying, and that's similar to even some things that I've pictured myself. Like I haven't gone into a lot of detail with, because I haven't been able to like picture, I guess, what would happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in that type of situation. But I've always visualized that in The Last Jedi, Kylo Ren would come face to face with Snoke, and that Snoke would be extremely. Well, not only are we going to see more of Snoke's true agenda and
Mm-hmm.
kind of his false loyalty, or I guess I have to backtrack a little bit because this was in the Force Awakens novelization, and it said that when there was a scene, it was the scene where Snoke was telling Kylo Ren that he needed to kill his father, that that was his next
Mm-hmm.
test. And as Kylo Ren was leaving that big room, um, it described Snoke as having this malicious smile that twisted his face. And so obviously Snoke, um, has this sense of false loyalty towards, towards Kylo Ren, and even just, uh, you know, I guess the, being kind of that false father figure and everything. He's really only using Kylo Ren for his own, to his own advantage. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
not only are we going to see more of that, but I think that we're going to see um, Snoke losing trust in Kylo Ren to be loyal to him and to carry out to carry out like his plans and everything. So I'm really wanting to see conflict between the two of them. And I wasn't very articulate when I explained that, but that's
Oh,
like
that's
the
fine.
gist of what I wanted to see.
Oh man, you gave me a thought and I just lost it. I'll retrieve it here in just a minute. But what I really loved about Snoke, I don't know if I said this on our last podcast, but Snoke, I actually prefer him over Palpatine or any of the other villains in the Star Wars franchise. And I know a lot of people don't, but for me, I do. And there's just something very sick about his character and the relationship between him and Ben. He has this it's very disturbing and creepy actually because he targets Ben when Ben's a child, and there's just this. It's just bizarre, but it definitely, for me, it hits a chord. And what I would love to see, and I'm sure that what the writers are going for, is for Ben to overcome this parasitic creature who has latched onto him. But the truth of the matter is, Snoke is terrified of Ben Solo. If you actually look at the way he treats Ben, he hits him before Ben is even out of the womb. He pursues Ben. And from the moment Ben is born, he has Snoke in his head. So he never gives Ben the freedom of choice. It's never been a free choice for Ben. That's one thing that I have come to realize whenever I studied it more, and that's why I've come to love Ben Solo's character so much. And also, I think others just don't understand. He truly, even though he's done heinous things, and yes, they're bad, but when you really look at his story as a whole, this man has never had a free thought in his life, ever, ever. His brain has been saddled with this parasitic worm that has just wriggled around and never allowed him. It's always punished him and made him feel inferior and manipulated him to break away from his mother. And then also, I personally think that Han Solo and Ben didn't have the best relationship. I think the last time they saw each other before Ben left with Luke, they had a massive knockdown, drag out fight. I think it's one of the main reasons that Leia sent him away. That's just my headcanon, but it's with the way that Ben had delivered the line, Han Solo, I've been waiting for this day a long time. It was just, it was weird. And then it had so many layers to it. And then you had the way Han was approaching him slowly as if he was approaching a wounded animal. And then the way Ben Solo, when Han gets close, he takes a step back and his shoulders turn in such a way that he's predatory, he's defensive. He's just like, don't come any closer to me. And if you actually see before when he turns around and he delivers that line, I've been waiting for this day, his shoulders tighten and his fists are, the way he's got them balled up, I mean, it's pure rage. And you can see him actually anchoring his fist in just a little bit to where it looks like if he revs back and hit Han, I mean, he would knock him out. That's how angry he looks. So I think something happened between Ben Solo and Han that drove them fully apart. And then I think that's another thing with Han. He personally blames himself about it, because for me it was like, why are Luke and Han ditching Leia, and Leia's the only one who remains, and she's the only one, as far as we know, we don't know about Luke, but as far as we know, Leia's the only one who still believed in Ben. We, I mean, Han thought he was gone, and we don't know about Luke, so she was the only one left.
The relationship between Kylo Ren and Han was one of the reasons why I loved Kylo Ren's character so much when I first
Mm-hmm.
saw The Force Awakens. Because I went from being not interested in Kylo Ren's character at all to being like very interested. I found him, very intriguing and everything. But I thought that one of the things that I wanted to know the most was what happened between Kylo Ren and Han that would have driven such a wedge between them, and that would not only make Kylo Ren feel so resentful, but also in pain. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
really hoping that we're going to see that in The Last Jedi. I think that just exploring that relationship would would just add a lot, just even that much more richness to that aspect of the story. And then also with, Kylo Ren's relationship with Snoke, I'm always like really surprised by, I mean, I guess like, I don't necessarily want to get into a conversation about the antis or anything,
Right,
but
right.
I think one of the things I'm always really stunned by is how are you not able to see that Snoke is, you know, just a massive creep for preying on Ben when he was a child. But that relationship almost reminds me of Ben being a member of Lost Royalty or something, and he's become so entrenched in this other figure who's just latched onto him, and that he's not able to really distinguish like his identity, um, or he's not able to distinguish himself from this other
Mm-hmm.
person. But I feel
Mm-hmm.
like at the point in The Force Awakens that we're seeing him, because he is actually starting to go against the orders from Snoke, and he does seem to have his own agenda with getting the map from BB-8 and everything. Like I feel like with other parts of the movie, he oscillates between um, being this person who does seem to be developing his own sense of identity and someone who's kind of brainwashed.
Mm-hmm. What would be interesting for me, and this might actually be the surprising twist, is if Ben starts to turn right around, I would say, Act 1 or Act 2, maybe. I don't know for sure, because some of the leaks and some of the rumors, you can never really tell. But if Ben, how do I word this? Basically, Snoke would start to cut down or put more pressure on Ben and not let him walk around as freely as he did in TFA. I'm wondering about that. I'm wondering how exactly he gets on Octu, and he's got his knights with him, and from what I understand. But who knows? But he gets there, and from what I understand, they filmed several weeks with just Luke, Rey, and Kylo Ren. So I'm curious how that all plays in with what Snoke is going to do, what Hux is going to do, the First Order, all of that. Because there's no way that Hux, if he knows about something or if he can stop something from happening, there's no way he would allow Ben to get it. He's latched on to Ben so too much, too tightly. He wouldn't let him go unless he believed he has him completely. Maybe because Ben killed Han, maybe he thinks, all right, I have him. He's not going to break away from me now. I've got my hold on him. But I don't know.
I can
I'm
see
not
him.
sure.
I can see him sending Kylo Ren to Octu because not only did he have the information from Rey's mind about that being the island that Luke Skywalker is, but now that Rey's there as well, I think that Snoke is going to want to target Luke, but he's also going to become more interested in maybe figuring out who Rey is, but if he already knows who she is or has some inkling, then he's gonna want to try to he's gonna try to like focus some of that attention on her. So
Right.
I can see Kylo Ren going to Octu under orders to maybe kill Luke Skywalker and then to bring Rey to Snoke. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I can see something like that happening.
I could see it too. I'm just curious about how exactly they're going to handle, because Ben is already falling away from Snoke, and what could have been is that Snoke knew he was falling away, and he convinced him to kill Han as a way to keep Ben under his thumb.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering. It's just for me. I'm very curious because I think the scenes we will get to see with Kylo Ren and Snoke and Hux. I'm wondering if you might get to see more of Ben's expressions because he's not going to have his mask all the time. You're going to
Yeah.
get to see more of his expressions as
I'm
Snoke
so
is telling him certain
excited.
things. I know. Me too.
And
But yeah,
I'm so excited for to see. I really want to see Kylo Ren and Hux glaring at each other and giving each other nasty looks.
so ready for that. I think someone actually pointed out in, let me see, it was one of the behind the scenes images of Ben. It was his profile view, and the camera was a little below him, and he was standing forward or stepping forward. I mean, there actually Hux is about 3 feet in front of him. Someone just noticed that the other day. So yeah, we're gonna get some scenes with them. I'm excited.
I am so excited. Yeah, and it's kind of funny because someone else pointed out that when Kylo Ren did wear his helmet, he had flowing, luxurious, super poofy hair. And now that he's not wearing a helmet, now he has like super flat hair.
I think it's just because he's sad. Or somebody said that his hairstylist was destroyed on Starkiller Base.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely a possibility.
Poor guy.
I'm thinking that they changed his hair probably because he has a lot more action sequences in the movie and he's going to be
Mm-hmm.
unmasked. So, I'm thinking that they just thought that doing the whole uh super fluffy wavy business from The Force Awakens just was too high maintenance to keep up with.
I think it also probably highlights his point or his personal journey through his arc, what he's feeling at the time, because I don't think his hair looks that bad. Some people don't like it,
I don't think it's
but
that bad.
yeah, I think it's fine. I think what it does is it illustrates that for him, all the peacocking that he was doing, he's not peacocking anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that it says it makes him look like he's a little bit more lost
Mm-hmm.
than he was in The Force Awakens, whereas in in the first movie, like you said, he was puffing out that chest and he was strutting around like he was
Oh yeah.
like he owned the galaxy. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but I think now he's feeling a little bit more deflated, like his hair.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I feel bad for him. I can't help but feel bad for him.
me too.
You know, I'm curious, and I wonder what you think about this. This is mainly just a theory I have. I haven't seen anyone else talk about this, but I do wonder if we might have a mirroring of something similar to how in the first scene when Finn disobeys a direct order and Ben lets him go. I'm wondering if we're going to have a mirror of that because they are the three mains. So I'm wondering, are we going to have something between Ben and Finn at some point? Something? And I'm wondering, would they mirror that? Would they do that again? Because from what I understand, Rose and Finn will be infiltrating a First Order ship or something to that nature. And I'm wondering if Ben is still with Snoke, then he would see uh, Finn and Rose, and he probably wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, that's true. I know. I'm curious about that. Like because I'm not really sure at what point in the movie that Finn and Rose
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
would be infiltrating the ship, and so I kind of always imagined that, or I'm sort of hoping that Kylo Ren's going to be going to Octu pretty early in the movie, and since Kylo Ren, Rey, and Luke are the main characters on the official poster, like it makes
Mm-hmm.
me think that they're gonna be the core trio of this
Mm-hmm.
next movie.
Mm-hmm. It makes me wonder because I think he does go to Octu pretty early, but that I guess you could say discounts my theory to a degree because it depends on how his character take or how his character perceives the First Order after he leaves Octu or however he leaves it, whether he's kidnapped, whether he leaves of his own volition with Rey. It just depends. But if you get a mirrored scene like that, I think it would be really cool, and it wouldn't have to be anything flashy. He would just see them and let them go, or maybe a stormtrooper is going after them wanting to question them, and Ben just walks up and either puts him to sleep or he just steps in front of him and says, "You're going to go back so and so," and he's, "I'm going to go back so and so," and
Yeah.
walks away.
I think it would be awesome if like Rose and Finn did sneak onto the ship and Kylo Ren was just like, I'm just gonna let him go. Like it's like I I don't know. Like I've given up on life, so yeah. But I think that would be awesome. I am wondering though, because like you know, I felt like when Finn and Kylo Ren were when they dueled each other in at the
Mm-hmm.
end of The Force Awakens, I felt
Mm-hmm.
like there was some major not there's some major beef between them. Not only
Mm-hmm.
do you have not only does Kylo Ren feel annoyed by Finn because um pretty much it's not Finn's fault, but in Kylo Ren's mind, like it is Finn's fault.
Yeah.
Everything bad that's happened to Kylo Ren has happened somehow, like directly linked to Finn. And so
Right.
not only is he attacking Finn for that reason, but I also kind of felt like he was like peacocking a little bit, and he
Mm-hmm.
was trying to assert his masculinity over Finn. Like I picked up on that vibe, and even some other people have too. So where Finn obviously like okay, so I know I'm not being very articulate here, but where Finn and Rose are going to have some time to develop a relationship, you might have something where because she idolizes him so much because like of everything that he did in the Force Awakens and being the big deal of the Resistance, but Finn to me is still going to be very much focused on Rey and reconnecting with Rey. And
Mm-hmm.
meanwhile, Rey and Kylo Ren are going to have all of this time on Octu together, and Rey is going to change a lot just as a character. And in
Mm-hmm.
the behind the scenes, there was a part where Rey and Finn were together in some kind of snowy, icy environment, and Rey was in her new costume with her hair down. So I'm kind of assuming that that's going to be in like the second half of the movie. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a possibility that Kylo Ren and Finn could end up meeting at that point in the movie. But I'm curious because Finn has such a negative opinion of Kylo Ren. Um, he could feel disillusioned by Rey suddenly having this not strictly enemies or adversarial relationship with him, and maybe even having some compassion and understanding for him. And I could
Hmm.
also see Kylo Ren as maybe seeing Finn as a potential threat. I don't know, like other people don't, have not really liked the idea of, I'm not like necessarily saying a love triangle. I don't think it's going to go that way, but I do think that there was a very particular dynamic that was set up between Finn and Kylo Ren in the first
Hmm.
movie, and I'm really interested to see if they're going to continue moving forward with that in The Last Jedi. So, like,
Hmm.
what is your opinion about that?
I understand what you're saying, and basically the way Finn sees Rey, especially now that they've introduced Rose, we know that pretty much I'm fairly certain that Rose is going to be a love interest for him. Even in The Force Awakens, there was a chance for it to go romantic with Finn and Rey because they had all these very obvious, aesthetically pleasing scenes for them that was like, oh, that's so cute, you know?
Yeah.
But it really wasn't necessarily romantic. Now, they could have turned it romantic very easily, but it wasn't necessarily romantic. The way he saw Rey is Rey was important to him in the fact that she saw him for the first time. And she looked at him as basically this larger than life, like she did with Han. But it was in that Finn wanted to be somebody who she believed him to be. And that's also why Han's line, women always find out the truth, always. So I think that dynamic is very interesting. Then you have Kylo Ren, and see, at first people were saying that he's a very jealous and possessive, and whenever he was fighting Finn, it did have to do with jealousy. I was a little, I really didn't believe that at first until I started reading pieces of the novelization. I was like, oh, wow, these people are on point. They're actually right. Kylo Ren is very jealous. And so he's very jealous of Finn because he's just so insecure with himself, really. I think that's where a lot of Kylo Ren's jealousy stems from, too. And then he's possessive, he's arrogant, titled, haughty, all those things. He peacocks. So it's just natural for him to be, it
Yeah.
is just natural. But as far as their dynamic, what I would find interesting overall is just how the three of them come together. And I think you're right. I think we're going to get to see Kylo Ren and Finn at a point. Of course, I'm kind of thinking that Rey will start calling him Ben. I don't know, maybe not, but I think she'll start calling him Ben, and he won't like it. But she'll just call him Ben anyway, the few times in the scenes or whatever, because that is something that filmmakers can use, and it's subtle and it's quick, but it illustrates so much. It illustrates a lot. So I think that you're going to get to see Finn watching these two interacting with each other, and he's not going to know how to take it. He's
Yeah.
going to feel a little betrayed because this was the guy who I jumped to your defense for, and now you're defending him, and I'm like, why are you standing on his? You're supposed to be over here with us, with Rose and me. You're not supposed to be over there. He said he was supposed to. What is he even doing? He is not supposed to be here. I'm gonna go kick his ass,
Yeah. Yeah. I can see Ben, or I can see Finn being like, Ben? Who's Ben? Like, why are you calling him that?